This broadcast of Newswire L.A. was filmed using the facilities of Vintage Hollywood. Vintage Hollywood, dinner, dancing, and more. We're heading back into our interview with Austin Dragon, but I wanted to take a few moments and point out that Austin's a very outspoken candidate with his own ideas and his own roadmap for where he thinks Los Angeles should be going. And that's actually refreshing in an era where the standard candidate is no longer acceptable. So let's get back to Jamie Wright and Austin Dragon, and stay tuned for comments he's going to make about the recent Occupy L.A. movement. We'll see you back here later.
You seem to be very honest and straightforward in, everything you say. How will you balance being so honest and so real about the things that need to change and also playing the game that is politics? I mean, how do you do that without eliminating people or alienating people?
Yeah, it's I guess the best way I can answer it is as passionate as I am about the community, and I definitely am going to run for office again. I really don't care about politics, which seems kind of strange, because I don't need to be in elective office to be somebody. Right. You have a lot of these people, their whole identity is wrapped in, I'm the honorable so-and-so. Right. I don't really care about that. And also, as part of the process, if you're really being honest with, and you're looking out for the community is going to have your back. Mm-hmm. So when you have these political battles, and there will be political battles, mm-hmm. and they'll be very nasty, as long as you're doing the right thing by the community, and you are really, and you understand, again, you're looking out for the community, you're their servant. Mm-hmm. If that's the attitude that you're coming at, I think it can help you be far more effective than what's going on, because they're really focused on, well, I'm a city council person, but I want to be mayor, or I'm a city council person, I want to be governor. Right. And see, their mind is every which way, rather than our community is not getting the services it needs, and this has been the case for decades. Mm-hmm. So their whole mindset is different. Okay. So that's really what my focus would be. Okay.
Sounds a little bit like an oxymoron, so why not just focus in maybe being a grassroots leader, community activist like you have been? Mm-hmm. Why then make the shift into the machine that you are so critical of? I mean, do you really think that you can make that change?
I can, because at the end of the day, it is a political solution. Mm-hmm. There's only so much you can do, particularly nowadays when the government, local, state, and federal, they are so involved. And that in itself is problematic, but you have to deal with the reality on the table, not the reality you wish it to be. Right. So you have to be on the inside to make those changes, because until that happens, you're never going to have the real kind of substantive changes that you need to help the community. It won't happen.
That's right. Speaking of substantive changes in the community, there seems to be a distinct divide between the young and the old.
Yes.
Young has certain views on what they see as important. The older group has views on things that they view are important, and rarely do those two match up.
Yeah.
How would you construct your message such that you can bring both groups together to support you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's also kind of disturbing, because I remember when Rosa Parks passed, and you could take a picture of Rosa Parks and go to blacks under a certain age, and they wouldn't have any idea what you were talking about. Mm-hmm. So it really kind of shows you that there really is even a disconnect in terms of not knowing the full history of what the community has been through. I think there's really kind of, one of the problems we have with younger voters is that there's so few of them and they don't vote. Mm-hmm. So that's one problem that you have to address. I think some of the things that really could help bridge the gap really is job creation, bringing new business, because it's a job benefits everyone. With some of the older voters, they really, a lot of them really rely on the safety net. So you really have to have a message that's broad enough that really can speak to everyone's kind of individual desires, what they're looking to get out of government. But unfortunately, one of the main problems in terms of bringing young people along is that some of it is that they have an unrealistic expectation as to what government can do. The other is there are things that the community can do for itself where the government really shouldn't be involved. And you need to kind of model what needs to happen to make those kind of changes. But it's not an easy process because as I mentioned to you before in terms of voter turnout, I mean, we now are getting 9% of people showing up to vote. 91% are not even engaged. And those are the older voters as well. So it's a longer term process, but to succinctly answer your question, you've got to have a message that really appeals to both groups. Yeah.
The Occupy movement seems not to have a common theme amongst the different cities. What are your views on how these movements can come together to really get their point across so that there is some change within the government?
Well, let me answer your question this way, because you have it seems from the question, you have a far more positive view of the Occupy L.A. group than I do. I really don't have respect for what's going on in Occupy L.A. when people are getting killed, women are getting raped, there's theft, there's all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, if you kind of contrast that with how the media portrayed the Tea Party, for instance, this madness wasn't going on. One of the problems is you have people coming out and you really have a group of weird characters. You have anarchists, you have, if you've gone down there, there's a lot of anti-Semitic signs. So this group to me is not representative of America, and it's not representative of what the problem is. And if you go up to any of them, what do you want to do? Many of them will look at you and not have an answer, because so how can the Occupy L.A. have an agenda if their individual members don't know which side is up, left or right or whatever? So I don't really have respect. Now, the issue of the problems we have with the economy, the problems we have with elected officials, those are legitimate issues. Let's talk about that. Let's do something about that. But camping in front of various places around the country where all this madness is happening, and I just the other day someone got shot. So this is no longer a legitimate movement, and they need to be cleared they need to be cleared away. If you have legitimate issues, let's do it. Let's have a real organization. Let's talk about those things. I really don't care what politically left, right, or center. Let's talk about those issues. But this is not the avenue to do that. So if it were up to me, they wouldn't be in front of LA.
So if you were council member Dragon, District 10, you would put forth a resolution
to move them out of
have them moved.
Exactly.
And how do you explain that as not being trampling on the freedom of speech and the right to assemble?
Well, you have rights, but as any group knows who wants to do any kind of protest, you have to get permits, you have to do all of that, all of which they've bypassed because the elected officials that we have in LA and San Francisco, because they identify with them. I don't know, because again, seeing signs that are some of the really are indistinguishable from Nazis in terms of some of this language, and also racist signs and all of that. So I'm not really getting, they have this idea of Occupy LA, but that's not the reality. So I would move them out of there, and also the impact they're having on local business.
Yeah.
And also it's not safe. It's not safe. So why would I, as a council person who's looking out for the community as a whole, why would I support something like that? Again, if you want to put together a legitimate organization and talk about grievances and talk about issues, I'm there with you. That's why I ran. That's why I continue to run. But this is not the way.
Austin, what are your views on term limits, and do you think the state of term limits as they are have been effective?
I was always against term limits, even from the beginning, because what has happened is what I suspected would happen. What you have now is musical chairs. The whole point of term limits. Now, I understand if we didn't have term limits, we'd still have Willie Brown as Speaker. Okay, I understand that. I totally understand that. Just like when we did it on the presidential level, it was really to get FDR out of there. Okay, I understand those things. But in terms of the practical aspect of it, what it has done is the complete opposite. The system is less responsive to the public, because think about it, because part of what you have to do as an elected official is you're raising money. So you're raising money, raising money, raising money. That's all you're doing. So you're spending a lot of time on that rather than as an elected official solving whatever problems. The other thing, it's made what I call the shadow people more powerful, because you're an elected official. What they can just simply say, or just interests, they can say, you know what, you're only going to be there a short period of time. What do we care about you? You know, you have a very short window. If you don't get whatever you want to get done, you're going to be out of there, and we'll have to deal with the next person. So we, however, will always be here. So it really makes elected officials less powerful. And then the other thing, we have term limits. We have a term limits every election. It's the election. And you can throw out, I know again, it's difficult, but there needs to be a burden on the voter to participate. We can throw out anybody we want every election cycle. And we shouldn't put together all of these kind of artificial things, whether it's term limits or so-called campaign finance reform. Those things actually have the opposite. They make it less, we have a government less and less responsive to the people.
So what would be your ideas on reform? How would you change it? Would you get rid of the term limits for local government? What would you do?
I personally would get rid of it, but I know politically that's just a non-starter with most voters and non-voters alike in L.A. because because they have such a negative view. So that would be really a discussion for once we turn things around, because as for right now, people say, you know what, let's have a one-term term limit. That's where people are in terms of their attitude. And I can't say anything against that. So,
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, sort of to bring everything full circle, if you had one piece of advice for a person who was in your shoes during a primary seeking to run against an incumbent with the resources, what would be one piece of advice you would give them, understanding the challenges that they face?
You have to have a clear path to victory, and again, unfortunately, much of that is the money, because you not only have to, there's really a small group of people that are basically electing the incumbents, and you really have to be able to appeal to them. And can you put together the money? What is your basic platform? What endorsements do you have? You really have to put together the whole package, and it can't simply be, well, the incumbent is no good and I can do better. Well, that's nice, but you need to think of it as kind of a business plan. You're going to the voter with a business plan. Yes, the incumbent is not where we want them to be, but what are you going to do, and how are you going to be able to unseat? There's a reason why incumbents all across the country, they rarely ever get kicked out. Rarely. Right. I mean, we're talking about 95% and above. So for you to do that, you have to be very serious, and it can't be this, this idea in the sky, oh, I'm better and I'll be the savior for the community. You need to get there first. And if the incumbent raises $1 million, you got to raise $1 million too, or don't even bother. Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with me.
Absolutely, thank you.
Austin Dragon and Jamie Wright. For more information, check out Newswire L.A. on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you.
And that concludes this broadcast of Newswire L.A. We thank you for joining us. We hope this is the first of many episodes that will focus on government, politics, sports, entertainment, and more. So continue to watch and continue to let us know what you think. In the meantime, if you want to follow anything and everything Newswire L.A., look us up on Facebook and Twitter at Newswire L.A. For Jamie Wright, Lloyd Hale, Benjamin Sisko, and the rest of the staff of Newswire L.A., I'm Chin Thomas Sangsi, and we thank you for joining us. This broadcast of Newswire L.A. was filmed using the facilities of Vintage Hollywood. Located at 4000 West Washington Boulevard, this facility is also available for private parties and events. For more information, call 323-733-1360 or 323-216-7528. Vintage Hollywood, dinner, dancing, and more.